Lines. It being 2 p.m, we'll move to questions without notice. Senator McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister for Families and Social Services, Senator Ruston. The Australian Securities and Investments Commission, ASIC, has advised that the ASIC Act 2001 prohibits a credit or debit card being sent to another person. I quote ASIC's advice that a person must not send another person a credit or debit card. What does this prohibition mean for the Morrison government's proposed rollout of the cashless debit card in the Northern Territory?
The Minister for Families and Social Services, Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President, and I thank Senator McCarthy for her question. I actually would like to advise the senator that the premise of which she's based her question about the cashless debit card being contrary to Section 12DL of the ASIC Act 2021 is not actually correct. The power actually is a protection to prevent financial institutions from signing people up to products such as credit cards with pre-approved limits without first obtaining their approval. So just as when social security payments are made by another means, via cheque, it's clear that directing someone's social security payment—
Order. Senator Ruston, for Senator Wong on a point of order.
A point of order, but actually I'm seeking leave to table the letter from ASIC, which might assist the minister in answering this question, because it doesn't appear that her answer is consistent with the advice that's received.
Is leave granted? No. I'll call Senator Ruston to continue. So I understand that will be considered not at the moment. Senator Ruston, to continue, or have you concluded your answer?
No. Thank you very much, Mr President. So just to finish off on this particular question is that it's clear that directing someone's social security payment to the cashless debit card does not fall under the provision which Senator McCarthy referred to, and that is why in 2016 that ASIC provided the government with a no-action letter for the purposes of the cashless debit card trial.
Senator McCarthy, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Given many communities do not have Centrelink services and the nearest towns are hundreds of kilometres away, what will happen to people who don't have a cashless debit card? Will they simply have no money, no food and no way of getting it?
Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President, and I thank Senator McCarthy for her follow-up question. As Senator McCarthy would be well aware, what we are proposing to do with the rollout of the cashless debit card into the Northern Territory and Cape York is, I suppose, the best description of it is to give the people who are currently on the Basics card a technology upgrade. At the moment, we believe that it's probably around 16,000 places where the Basics card is able to be operated in Australia. The cashless debit card works in nearly 1 million outlets and basically is able to be operated in any premise that has an EFTPOS machine. So the inference of your question is completely misplaced in the sense of the only thing that this legislation seeks to do is to provide recipient or people who are currently on the Basics card the added utility and functionality of being able to use a card that's universally recognised.
Senator McCarthy, a final supplementary question.
Mr President, I do seek leave again to see if we can table the letter from ASIC which refutes all of what the minister is saying.
Leave is granted.
Thank you.
Senator McCarthy.
The Coalition Government has been proposing the rollout of the cashless debit card across the whole of the Northern Territory for 18 months. How is it that the Morrison Government has failed to properly consider that fundamental elements of Mr Morrison's proposals are prohibited by legislation according to this letter from ASIC?
Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President. Well, I will beg to differ with the interpretation that is being made in the question as to what the letter says according to my advice. But, however, I have the letter now and I will refer to it in the future. But I just wanted to make it very, very clear that what we are seeking to do with the legislation to which the senator refers is to enable people who are currently on the Basics card, and I've got to say it's a really well-named card, it's pretty basic. It is also very obvious for people who are on the Basics card that that's what they're on. The new technology that works in every outlet that has an EFTPOS machine will be completely and utterly neutral in its appearance. People can use the card without anybody knowing that the type of card it is. And in fact, we are currently in discussions with the Traditional Credit Union in the Northern Territory to make sure that we can assist those people in the Northern Territory who wish to bank with their own credit union to use that as the issuer as
Senator
well.
Ruston, time for the answers expired. Senator Rennick.
My question is to the Minister for Employment, Skills, Small and Family Business, Senator Cash.
Senator Watt, restrain yourself.
Minister, in the wake of a year of unprecedented challenges, how has the Morrison government taken action to support small business through the COVID-19 pandemic to keep their doors open and to keep their employees in jobs?
The Minister for Employment, Skills, Small and Family Business, Senator Cash.
Thank you, Mr President, and I thank Senator Rennick for the question. And Mr President, to say that 2020 has been a challenging year for small and family business is an understatement. They are the lifeblood, as we know, of our communities. Every single day, their hard work and dedication now sees over 6 million Australians go to work in a job, and they contribute around $418 billion to our national economy. COVID-19, though, has had a profound impact on them. In the wake of COVID-19, many small and family businesses have faced unprecedented challenges. Government-mandated shutdowns, because we needed to protect the health of Australians, has meant that many small businesses around Australia have faced disrupted supply chains and unimaginable trading restrictions when they were told that because of the decision that we had to implement to protect the health of Australians, they would need to close their doors when we shut down parts of the Australian economy. The disruption, of course, was no fault in relation to the 3.5 million small and family businesses around Australia. But, Mr President, the Morrison government, we moved decisively and we moved quickly to put in place historic levels of economic support to help those small and family businesses get through COVID-19. And as we know, our JobKeeper payment that has provided those small and family businesses what was needed to keep their employees on their books. Around 3.6 million Australians, they maintain that connection with their employer. The cash flow boost, it has now supported more than 800,000 employing small and medium businesses with $32 billion in terms of a cash flow injection. And of course, our Supporting Apprentices wage subsidy has now delivered over $741 million and is keeping around 104,500 apprentices on the job in training where we need them to be.
Senator Rennick, a supplementary question.
Is the minister aware of any examples of how the programs and supports the Morrison government have implemented have supported small business to rebuild, recover and play a key role in Australia's economic comeback?
Senator Cash.
Well, Mr President, I can give you the example from Senator Rennick's home state of Queensland. It is a gentleman by the name of Paul, an electrical small business owner and operator in Toowoomba. As a result of COVID-19, Paul, like so many others, was looking to downsize his business. But when the government announced the JobKeeper policy, that gave Paul the incentive and the optimism to invest in his business. The wage subsidy gave him the cash flow that he needed to take on 2 new apprentices, Mr President, and he utilised the expanded and now extended instant asset write-off, and he was able to invest in a new ute to support his work. So when COVID-19 hit, Paul was looking to downsize, but with the support of government policy, he not only was able to invest in his business and buy that new ute, he was also able to utilise the wage subsidy, and he has now brought on 2 new apprentices. That's what the government is all about, backing small and family businesses.
Senator Cash. Senator Rennick, final supplementary question.
Can the minister please update the Senate on how the Morrison government's Go Local First campaign is working to support small and family businesses, including over the Christmas and New Year period?
Senator Cash.
And Mr President, certainly as the Minister for Small and Family Business, my message to all Australians this Christmas in the lead up to it as we go into the new year in 2021 is to go local first. The Go Local First campaign, this is all about raising that awareness across Australia to actually spend with our local small and family businesses. Why? Because when you shop locally in Australia, you support a local community, you support a family, you support a local sporting club. I am pleased to acknowledge that many senators and MPs across all sides of politics are proudly supporting the Go Local First campaign. And in terms of the lead up to Christmas, if we do have that ability to go out there and to purchase something, just remember, it might be something small to you, but to that small and family business who has been doing it tough, it means a lot to them. And so my message to all Australians is support our small and family businesses and go local first.
Senator Sterle.
Yes, thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham. On Monday in question time, the Prime Minister refused to guarantee that no worker would be worse off as a result of his industrial relations changes. Can the Minister confirm no worker will be worse off?
Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr President. I thank Senator Sterle for his question. And indeed, our ambition is to ensure that Australian workers on the whole are better off, and in fact that there are more Australian workers as a result of the types of reforms that our government seeks to bring forward, because that is the crucial part of the challenge we face at present coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, that we make sure that we get more Australians into jobs once again. The recovery has begun, the comeback has begun, but it has a way to go,
Senator
Mr President.
Watt, on a point of order.
On relevance, Mr President, the question wasn't about whether workers on the whole would be better off. The question was about whether every worker would be better off or whether no worker would be worse off.
To be directly relevant to this question, I've allowed you to restate the question, Senator Watt. I will listen very carefully to the minister. And to be directly relevant to this question, an answer that was strictly defined by discussion of the bills that were introduced that were the subject of this, I'll listen carefully. I can't instruct him how to answer a question. I heard interjections asking for a one-word answer. That is not appropriate for me to attempt to instruct an answer of the question. But I'll listen very carefully to the minister continuing. Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr President. Now, in the height of the pandemic, our government sought to bring together unions and employers to engage in discussions around workplace relations legislation in a spirit of cooperation, not conflict. And I thank all of those parties who came together. Our government is grateful for the cooperation that has been shown during the pandemic, for the engagement through those processes. Even though getting universal agreement to every issue, of course, proved immensely challenging, we welcome the fact that parties came together.
Senator Wong, on a point of order.
Point of order, direct relevance. The minister has had over a minute and a point of order on relevance. He was asked to confirm whether or not can he confirm no worker will be worse off. Like the Prime Minister, he is avoiding the question, which is telling in itself. But I would ask him to return to the question.
I'm listening to the minister. He was turning to the legislation or the bills, the topic, the direct topic. I cannot instruct him to answer a question in specific terms. If, however, he is narrowly speaking about this particular piece of proposed legislation, then I do consider that directly relevant, because the question is about that particular piece of legislation, obviously without foreshadowing something on the notice paper. But I call Senator Birmingham to continue.
Thanks, Mr President. So our approach and our spirit in this has been to try to achieve cooperation as to how reform can best be achieved to get the most number of Australians into employment and into jobs. Those opposite clearly already want to choose the path of conflict. We have chosen the path of cooperation. In relation to the Better Off Overall test, the same two tests that currently apply will continue.
Senator Watt, on a point of order.
On relevance, this is the fourth time we have asked the minister to confirm that no worker will be worse off. It's a pretty simple question.
Senator Watt, the minister was actually talking about tests contained in the announcement at that point. I do consider that to be directly relevant, even if it's not in the terms the opposition would like. There's an opportunity after question time to debate the answer. Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr President. As I was saying, in relation to the Better Off Overall test, the same two terms that the opposition put in place when they were in government will apply in the future, in terms of the majority of employees needing to agree and, of course, the independent umpire, the Fair Work Commission, signing off on
Order,
any EAs.
Senator Birmingham. Senator Sterle, a supplementary question.
Mr President, I have a very precise supplementary. Thank you. Minister Birmingham, why is the Prime Minister refusing to guarantee that no worker will be worse off?
Senator Birmingham.
Mr President, our government has very clearly outlined our ambitions in relation to this reform. The senator comes in here and asks about a guarantee. Well, the guarantee that we give is that every policy we are pursuing is about getting more Australians into jobs once more. That's the guarantee that we are pursuing. We went to the last election proudly during the preceding 6 years, having seen 1.5 million additional Australians gain the opportunity, the dignity, the value of employment. That job creation record was unparalleled in Australian history. COVID-19 has hit that, but we have seen a comeback of more than 600,000 jobs to date, and our intention is to pursue the types of policies that will get more Australians back into jobs again into the future.
Senator Sterle, a final supplementary question.
Yes, thank you, Mr President. At a time when almost 1 million Australians are unemployed, 1.4 million Australians are underemployed, and for Australians with jobs, wages growth is at record lows. Why is the Prime Minister being dishonest about the impact of these changes, which will cut take-home pay and leave workers behind?
Senator Birmingham.
Well, thanks, Mr President. I had some hope through the first few parts of Senator Sterle's supplementary there that he had been listening and that perhaps he did recognise the point the government was making, which is that these reforms, the COVID Recovery Industrial Relations Package, coming on top of our budget measures and all of our other support measures, are all about getting more Australians back into jobs, are all about ensuring that employers have the confidence to employ, that employers have the confidence to invest and create more jobs. We've been pleased to see the rate of jobs growth over recent months. It is crucially important we see that rate of jobs growth continue, that we get more Australians back to the position that we were in prior to the pandemic, by getting them into work, by getting them into jobs, and by creating those jobs through having the strongest possible economy, the strongest possible investment environment, and indeed the most effective workplace relations systems possible, built through collaboration and discussion between parties.
Senator Watt, learn to count to 10 slowly again. Senator Hanson-Young.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham. A fire has been burning on the World Heritage Site on Fraser Island, Gurri, since October 14th. That's 8 weeks, destroying some 80,000 hectares, 60% of the island, and killing the wildlife who call it home. What has the Prime Minister done to provide support to help save this precious forest, biodiversity and the animals that live there? Or, Minister, is it a case that he doesn't hold a hose, so it doesn't matter to him?
The Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr President. Well, that's just a cheap and pathetic question coming from the Australian Greens, a cheap and pathetic question that tries to score a cheap political point in the face of something that is actually very serious. I'm not
Senator
even
Wong.
Senator Wong. I'm sure that's where the supplementary questions will go. But that wasn't even the nature of this question.
Senator
wasn't even the nature of this question, Senator Wong.
Senator Wong, please. Senator Birmingham.
Now, you've got the cheap political points coming from there and all over the place. Mr President, in relation to the fire on Fraser Island, Category B,
Senator Wong.
Category B,
Senator Birmingham, please resume your seat. I can barely hear Senator Birmingham's answer. Senator Wong, when you're injecting to that degree across the table, I think interjecting. Sorry, it's been a long year. Interjecting. I think it's a bit much to expect a minister to not respond in a disorderly way to a disorderly interjection, but there were lots of interjections across the table. Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr. President. In relation to the Fraser Island fire, government has declared Category B emergency in that regard. That results in various assistance being available for states and territories under the agreed formulation of assistance and work in conjunction with states and territories. I gather the Queensland officials have also identified the difficulties in relation to that fire, the particular difficulties in terms of accessing the difficult terrain and the limitations that they have in that regard. Of course, the Commonwealth stands ready to assist, work and cooperate with the Queensland Government where we have the resources or ability to do so. It's why the action has been taken in terms of making the declaration already, and we will respond to any further requests that come from the Queensland Government as swiftly as we can.
Senator Hanson-Young, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the 4th World Heritage Area in Australia to experience the catastrophic destruction because of climate-fuelled fires in the past 2 years. Why has the government done nothing to stop climate change and to protect these globally significant sites? And what are you doing to take scientific advice to act now before it's gone for good?
Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr. President. Well, what we have done in relation to climate change is, as a country, businesses, farmers, Australians, leading the world in many areas in terms of emissions reductions. That's what we've done and what we continue to do. As a country, we have delivered 13% reduction in our emissions between 2005 and 2018, compared with 8% reduction in Japan or 1% reduction in New Zealand or 10% reduction in the US. We've led in all of those cases. As a people, as a per capita contribution, it's by far and away much greater than that, Mr. President. Our reductions over that period of time equate to 29% on a per capita basis. That exceeds Germany at 16%, Japan at 7%, Canada at 13%. So, as a people, Australians have made contributions in reducing emissions far, far greater than the rest of the world, and in doing so have met and exceeded our commitments.
Senator Birmingham. Senator Hanson-Young, a final supplementary question. Order.
The World Heritage Committee warned the Environment Minister over a year ago that climate change was a threat to Fraser Island. The minister failed to act, and now the island is ablaze. Where is she? Where is she hiding? And will the Prime Minister get her to work?
Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr. President. Well, again, it's the type of cheap headline-grabbing stunts that you would expect from the Greens, no doubt to be sliced and diced for a social media video on which they can grandstand, taking cheap shots, ignoring the facts or the evidence, ignoring, of course, the efforts that are being made that I was just referencing in relation to climate and emissions reduction. They ignore all of those things just so that they can grandstand. They ignore, of course, the fact that climate change is a global challenge, that Australia, doing our bit in meeting and exceeding on the commitments that we make, but it also necessitates other countries to do more, to actually reduce their emissions to the same types of degree as Australia has. They're the types of things that we will continue to work internationally to engage in, while investing record sums in terms of the technology roadmap and transformation necessary at home, as well as helping to build adaptation and resilience in crucial areas like Fraser Island.
Time has expired. Senator Chandler.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question is to the Minister for Women, Senator Payne. Can the minister update the Senate on the Morrison government's support for female-led start-ups across the country and how this will help build a stronger economy following the COVID-19 pandemic?
The Minister for Women, Senator Payne.
Thank you very much, Mr President, and I thank Senator Chandler for her question. Just this week, Mr President, the Minister for Industry, Science and Technology, Minister Karen Andrews, and I have announced the first 51 grant recipients in the Boosting Female Founders Initiative. These are grants which are going to help some of our best and brightest women launch their ideas for the future. The initiative supports these women entrepreneurs to grow their businesses and ultimately to create jobs for all Australians. We do know that female-founded startups do face additional challenges in getting the finance that they need to establish themselves and to grow as businesses. Through the 2020 Women's Economic Security Statement, we've invested over $35 million in the Boosting Female Founders Initiative. That will provide grants of between $25,000 and $480,000 to 282 startups that are majority owned and led by women. We'll also provide tailored mentorship and advice to up to 4,300 women entrepreneurs. Mr President, the businesses are very diverse. They include businesses like Champion Life Education, a health education technology company which facilitates the development of lifelong healthy habits in young people. It includes the award-winning Wool Cool Australia, which is an innovative, sustainable packaging business that uses Australian wool for its products. It includes a really interesting New South Wales business based in the Hunter, run by the owner and operator is Sheree Johnson, an Aboriginal arts and education consultant who works on Aboriginal cultural capacity training, on cultural workshops, amongst other things, Mr President. So amongst the 51 grant recipients, there's an extraordinary diversity of activity, there's an extraordinary diversity of businesses, and it's because, Mr President, we believe in private sector-led economic growth as well as in boosting women's workforce.
Senator Chandler, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Can the minister advise the Senate of the government's initiatives to help skilled women across regional Australia get back into the workforce or stay employed?
Senator Payne.
Thank you very much, Mr President. And I know that, being from Tasmania, the senator will be very interested in this particular question, Mr President, even if some opposite are not. This government is committed to boosting the confidence of rural and regional women in returning to paid work, as well as in supporting businesses to retain skilled women workers. The Minister for Employment, Skills and Small and Family Business, Senator Cash, and I recently announced the second intake of regional businesses that will benefit from the Career Revive pilot initiative. Under this initiative, Mr President, business owners receive expert advice on how to improve their business practices and policies in order to remove the barriers that exist to women's workforce participation. It does help them to develop tailored action plans, I should say, to attract and retain skilled women. And through this measure, regional businesses will be able to attract more women back to work after they've had an extended career break. It will help strengthen regional business, boost women's employment in regional areas and rebuild our national economy.
Senator Chandler, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Can the minister also advise what the government is doing to support women and girls across the Indo-Pacific region, particularly with respect to peace and security?
Senator Payne.
Thank you very much, Mr President. This year we have, with Samoa, co-hosted 2 Pacific Women-led virtual meetings. Over 30 women from more than 18 different countries to discuss our responses to the issues challenging the region during the pandemic. A really important opportunity for those views to be heard, and I hope to host a further meeting before the end of the year. With the United Nations, we're also supporting local women's networks and peace builders to address gender-based violence, to reduce isolation and exclusion. In the Solomon Islands, for example, we've supported increased involvement of women leaders in vital provincial roles helping with disaster management. We also know the risk that COVID-19 poses to women's health and safety, as well as on their economic empowerment, leadership and resilience. This is a central priority of our very, very important Partnerships for Recovery strategy, including in our individual country programs in the Indo-Pacific.
Senator Watt.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham. Can the minister confirm that under Mr Morrison's industrial relations changes, employers will be able to cut the wages and conditions of their employees?
Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham.
Well, thanks, Mr President. In the terms in which Senator Watt comes in and presents that, I certainly cannot confirm that's the case. What I can confirm, Mr President, is very much that the reforms we're putting in place are about getting more Australians back into work, building on the strong jobs growth that we have had in recent months and ensuring that continues into the future. In getting more Australians back into work, the different pillars of our COVID economic recovery are built upon ensuring that we have the strongest possible economy. We have that economy through the budget incentives to drive further investment, through the support for Australian households and families by bringing forward the tax cuts that will benefit those families and put more money back into their pockets to be able to invest as they see fit, through the types of measures in skills reform, in the JobMaker program that we have made sure we are outlining and implementing to give every possible incentive for people to be work-ready and for employers to particularly invest in employing young Australians. And we build upon those reforms. We build upon those reforms, Mr President, by ensuring that we have industrial relations and workplace relations systems that offer the capacity for employers to employ with confidence, that offer greater certainty for employees, for example casual employees, in terms of their rights and their opportunities to convert into permanency of employment, that indeed maintain the Better Off Overall test under a framework where changes require the approval of a majority of employees, changes require the approval of the independent umpire, that we have these frameworks in place, and the scare campaign those opposite are seeking to start is just a sign of their desperation and desire to pursue
Senator Birmingham,
conflict unnecessarily.
time for the answers expired. Senator Watt, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. A very specific question to the minister. Will it be possible for every worker at a workplace to be worse off because of Mr Morrison's industrial relations changes?
Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr President. Australians will be better off as a result of there being more Australians in work. Australians will be better off as a result of every employer in the country having greater confidence to
Senator
invest.
Birmingham. Senator Watt, on a point of order.
Mr President, you'll note that that was a very specific question, and it was about whether every worker at a workplace will be worse off, not about workers generally, not about anything else. Workers at a specific workplace.
Thank you, Senator Watt. I've allowed you to restate the question. Again, I come to the test of direct relevance, which is a narrower one than broad relevance that was in place until several years ago. In my view, to be directly relevant to such a specific question, the answer must refer to this particular aspect of the package of legislation. Now, that shouldn't be taken as instructing a minister to answer in the terms that the opposition seeks, but I do think that a specific question of this nature requires an answer about this aspect of the policy in question. But again, I say that doesn't have to accept the nature or the terms in which the question is asked. Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr President. Now, as I said in relation to the primary question and in relation to earlier questions on this matter today, the Better Off Overall test remains under the reforms that our government is proposing. And under that test, the majority of employees need to endorse a change. The majority of employees. So when the senator comes in here and asks a question about what happens to every employee, well, the test is remaining that the majority of employees need to agree to the changes. It can't be any clearer than that for the senator, but that's not the only safeguard, because the Independent Fair Work Commission needs to agree as well, Mr President.
Senator Watt, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. I know the senator doesn't want to answer this, but I ask again, can he give a guarantee that under Mr Morrison's industrial relation changes, no worker will be worse off?
Senator Birmingham.
Well, Mr President, we do keep coming back to the same desire for the opposition to narrow a complex area of reform. Mr President, our intention is to make sure that Australian workers are better off, all Australian workers are better off, by virtue of there being more jobs for Australian workers. The more jobs there are for Australian workers, the more confidence every
Senator
Australian
Birmingham,
worker should
I've
have.
got Senator Watt on his feet. Order. Senator Watt is on his feet. Senator Watt.
Thank you, Mr. President. I could not have made the question more specific, Mr. President. It's very simple. Can the minister guarantee that no worker will be worse off?
And Senator Watt, I think, with respect, when the minister is talking about part of it, like the better, I hasten not to get into the language of it, but the boot tests and aspects like that, I do think that is directly relevant. Because that is the part that it addresses the specific question, but not in the terms you seek. You can debate that afterwards. And I think the minister on this question and the previous one, when I mentioned that, did turn to that specific nature and was directly relevant. Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr. President. So the fact is, Mr. President, that every Australian is better off when we have a stronger economy. Every Australian is better off when we have more jobs being created. Every Australian will have more job security when there are more job opportunities across the Australian economy. Every Australian will be better off in terms of the services that can be provided, in terms of the potential for wages growth, when we have the highest possible rates of employment in this country. That's what we are seeking to do right across all of our economic
Senator
reforms.
Birmingham. Senator McKenzie.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Agriculture, Senator Ruston. The Australian forestry industry is the ultimate renewable industry, growing raw materials that make the fibre-based products we use each and every day. The industry contributes 6.6% to the nation's manufacturing output. Can the minister outline the economic benefits the forestry industry delivers to regional communities and what the Liberal and National government is doing to support our world-class forestry industry, particularly as we work to recover from COVID-19 pandemic and build a stronger Australia?
Minister representing the Minister for Agriculture, Drought and Emergency Management, Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thanks Senator McKenzie for her question and her absolute long-standing interest in all agriculture, but particularly our amazing forests in Australia. And I know, growing up in a regional town in Victoria, Senator McKenzie knows firsthand how tremendously important our forestry sector is to our regional communities. And Senator McKenzie, forests and trees are the ultimate renewable resource. They grow. And can I also acknowledge Senator Duniam as the Assistant Minister for Forestry for his extraordinary work and passion in making sure that this industry continues to have the potential to grow, to support the Australian economy, but most particularly to support our regional communities. You know, whether that be in Imbil, whether it be in Tuba, it might be in Portland, it might be in the southeast of the state where I come from, Bunbury over in Western Australia. Our timber and forestry industries are absolutely a vital part of our economy and a vital part of our regional area. But these timbers, they are sustainable. They're sustainably managed and they are provider of a massive amount of employment across Australia, particularly for those people that are employed in regional areas. 52,000 Australians take home pay as a result of working directly in our timber industry. And in Senator McKenzie's home state of Victoria, more than 15,000 people are directly employed in this particular industry, which is worth more than $23 billion a year to the Australian economy. We acknowledged last year that the industry was heavily impacted by the season's bushfires, and this has obviously been compounded recently by the impact of COVID and recent export disruptions. So that's why we have worked with the industry, and I acknowledge AFPA and the industry, to provide $65 million to target support to the industry going forward.
Senator Ruston. Senator McKenzie, a supplementary question.
Absolutely, Mr. President. Thank you, Minister. Great news. Can you outline the significant environmental benefits that are delivered through sustainable forestry operations in Australia and how the Liberal and Nationals government is supporting the industry to continue to deliver these benefits to the environment globally?
Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Well, Senator McKenzie, absolutely this government supports the sustainable development and expansion of sustainable plantation forests across Australia. Every year, 70 million new trees are planted, and these forests, they capture carbon, they grow jobs, and they provide the timber that Australia needs as well as an export opportunity for this country. And we're absolutely delivering on our election commitment for the forestry sector by making it easier for plantations and farm forestry projects to generate carbon credit through the $2 billion Climate Solutions Fund. And this will drive $4 billion worth of investment in emissions reduction projects in Australia. So we're reducing red tape for projects located in our 5 regional forestry hubs, so it will make it easier for the private sector to invest in new Australian forestry products, create jobs and reduce emissions at the same time.
Senator Mackenzie, a final supplementary question.
Thank you very much, Minister. I'd just like to recognise the Chair of AFPA, Greg McCormack, and all the forestry workers that have been in. Sally McManus hasn't been the only one talking to real workers today in Parliament House. Can the minister outline the risks to the future growth of our world-class sustainable forestry industry and how the Liberal and Nationals government are working to mitigate and overcome these risks?
Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President. And I too acknowledge the Chair of AFPA and say how much I miss not being your minister anymore. But the Morrison government, as I said, is absolutely committed to the long-term sustainable management and conservation of our forests, and that's why we have sought to extend all our regional forestry agreements so that we can make sure that we have the best mechanism in place to balance the environmental and economic and social demands of the communities and the Australian economy to make sure that our forestry sector can play the role that we know it can play in the Australian economic future, but also making sure, once again, that we create those jobs, because it is about creating jobs and supporting our regional communities. So RFAs are a modern way of us being able to manage our forests through increased transparency and making sure that we are focused on reporting outcomes and making sure that we continually review the management of our forests so that we can get the best out of our forests and maintain
Senator
sustainability.
Ruston. Senator Faruqi.
Thank you, Mr President. My question without notice is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham. Yesterday, the report of Aotearoa, New Zealand's Royal Commission of Inquiry into the terrorist attack on Christchurch Masjid, was released. This report makes for highly disturbing reading. It details how an Australian man was radicalised and came to commit this horrific terrorist attack. It makes clear that the terrorist, who murdered 51 people, began forming his extreme right-wing Islamophobic ideology in this country from a young age, including through engaging with online far-right groups based in Australia. While the report focuses on New Zealand, there are lessons in it for the way Australia approaches terrorism, security, online extremism and racial and religious hatred. Has the Prime Minister read the report, and how does the government intend to respond to it?
The Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr President. I thank Senator Faruqi for her question on, of course, the very serious issue of the New Zealand Royal Commission of Inquiry into the terrorist attacks on the Christchurch mosques. The government is obviously aware of the report into the attacks and that it has been made public. It is a lengthy report with 44 recommendations contained within it. Our understanding is that the New Zealand government has either agreed or agreed in principle as part of its interim response to the report. The New Zealand government has committed that it will deliver a final response to the report in the new year following consultation with members of the New Zealand community. Our government has a strong partnership with New Zealand when it comes to countering terrorism, all forms of terrorism, including through our joint membership of the Australia-New Zealand Counter-Terrorism Committee. I give the Senator, indeed all Senators and the Australian public, the commitment that our government will examine the report thoroughly, all 44 of its recommendations thoroughly, the final response of the New Zealand government to the report thoroughly, and will engage with the New Zealand government on how it is implementing the recommendations of the report and consider any and all implications for the operation of our own counter-terrorism policies and practices.
Senator Faruqi, a supplementary question.
Minister, the report details the man's associations with various Australian far-right groups and his donations to extremist media organisations, which have regularly been given platforms and crossed over into mainstream politics and media in Australia. Some of these groups have targeted my office and planned to disrupt events hosted by me. Is the government concerned about the normalisation of far-right politics in Australia?
Senator Birmingham.
Mr. President, let me be very clear. Our government condemns terrorism in all of its forms, has no tolerance for such behaviour and, of course, has no tolerance for any form of terrorism, right-wing, extremist or otherwise. Government and law enforcement agencies are committed to addressing such forms of terrorism. This year, I am advised that extreme right-wing individuals comprised between 30% and 40% of ASIO's priority counter-terrorism investigative subjects. Our agencies take these issues seriously, regardless of the ideology that may be the motivating factor or otherwise. Australia's counter-terrorism legislative framework is agnostic towards ideology. As with all forms of terrorism, we continue to pursue investigative activities, disruptions and prosecutions, and invite the cooperation of all
Senator
Australians
Birmingham.
to assist in
Time
doing
for
so.
the answers expired. Senator Faruqi, a final supplementary question.
Minister, several of the recommendations of the report relate to properly criminalising hate speech and tracking hate crimes. The report acknowledges a link between hate crime and terrorism. In Australia, our hate speech laws are very narrow, and we do not track hate crimes at the national level. Will the government change the law to stamp out hate speech and start tracking hate crimes properly?
Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr. President. Mr. President, as I indicated in response to the primary question, we will work very closely both with the New Zealand government in relation to understanding all aspects of the report and all aspects of the actions and implementation arrangements that New Zealand takes in relation to this report. In doing so, we will be thorough in terms of our assessment.
Order. Senator Faruqi. Sorry, I was passed.
Point of order is to relevance, President. I asked a very specific question about hate speech laws, and will the government actually change the laws to stamp out hate speech?
The question contained a preamble to that specific part at the end, Senator Faruqi. I'll listen carefully, but I believe the minister was being directly relevant. Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr. President. Well, indeed, Senator Faruqi, from my recollection, your question asked about recommendations in the report that went to matters of hate speech and associated laws and regulations. So when I say that we will examine the report carefully, that we will work with New Zealand, that we will seek to understand the action that they take in relation to implementation of recommendations, and of course we will assess all of that against ensuring we have the strongest possible preventions, protections and disruptions available to ensure all forms of terrorism are prevented so much as possible.
Senator Urquhart.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question is to the Minister for Employment, Skills, Small and Family Business, Senator Cash. Why is the minister pushing a plan to allow people to qualify for some trades with no on-the-job training?
The Minister for Employment, Skills, Small and Family Business, Senator Cash.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And in response to the question, the premise of the question is false. That is not what is occurring.
Senator Urquhart, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. President. The National Centre for Vocational Education Research released a report last week that showed on-the-job training was critical to helping Australians get work. So why is the Morrison government doing the opposite?
Senator Cash.
Well, again, perhaps you did not listen to or understand my answer to your primary question.
Order.
The answer to your question, the premise of your question is false. And I know who you've been talking to, so that's fine. That's not a problem at all. The government has no plans, let me confirm,
Order.
no plans
Order.
to ban—
Please resume your seat, please, Senator Cash. I must say, if I had to pick a voice in the chamber I would not have trouble hearing, it would be Senator Cash. There is way too much noise. I meant that as a compliment, Senator Cash. But if I can't hear Senator Cash, there is way too much noise in this chamber. Senator Cash, please continue.
Thank you. The government, despite what you have been told, has no plans to ban on-the-job training. And in fact, we believe, in fact we are firmly of the belief, that workplace requirements are a critical part of developing the skill set required and an important element of competency-based training in Australia.
Senator Urquhart, a final supplementary question.
So, given the government has presided over $3 billion in cuts from TAFE and the loss of 140,000 Australian apprentices, isn't dropping on-the-job training just the latest example of the Morrison government leaving Australian apprentices like Isabel from Temco and John from Incat, who are in the gallery up here today, behind?
Senator Cash.
Well, the answer to your question is no. And again, what I'd say to both Isabel and John, I understand they met with my office today. I was unable to meet with them, but I congratulate them on the work they are undertaking. The premise of the question is false. The government has no plans to ban on-the-job training, and in fact, as I've already stated, we value workplace requirements and we believe they are critical to developing skills, and they are an important part of competency-based training in Australia. But more broadly, you've actually asked Ms Quill's question. Thank you. That is fantastic. What has the Prime Minister said? Vocational education and skills, they are at the forefront of our economic recovery from COVID-19. That is why the government is investing this year alone almost $7 billion, colleagues, almost $7 billion in vocational education and training. That is why we have put in place the Supporting Apprentices and Trainees Wage Subsidy. That is why we have put in place
time for the answer
apprentices.
has expired. Thank you, Senator Cash. Time for the answer. Please resume your seat, Senator Cash. Please resume your seat. Sorry, Senator Cash. I was calling the minister to resume their seat, and I've been ignored much more while I've been calling for order generally across the chamber. But ministers should actually resume their seat when I say time has concluded. Senator Hughes.
Thank you, Mr President. And my question is to the Minister for Defence, Senator Reynolds. Can the minister provide an update on the benefits of our involvement in the global F-35 program to Australia and Australian industry?
The Minister for Defence, Senator Reynolds.
Well, thank you very much, Mr President, and I sincerely thank Senator Hughes for that question. Sometimes in this job you have challenging days, and sometimes you just have simply great days. And today is certainly a great day. The global F-35 Joint Strike Fighter program is delivering the most capable and best value fifth-generation multi-role fighter to meet Australia's air power needs. The JSS introduction into service is progressing well. In fact, I'm delighted to say it is progressing very well. Of the 72 aircraft are being acquired, 30 are already in service in Australia, and we have 3 more on the way. This capability will be the backbone of Air Force's future air combat operations. This important program is now also delivering unprecedented economic opportunities for businesses right across our nation. Opportunities that Australian companies and Australian workers are seizing. This morning I announced that Australian companies have signed contracts worth an astonishing $2.7 billion under the Global Joint Strike Fighter program. Over 50 Australian companies have participated in the program to date, and it is expected to support around 5,000. That's 5,000 Australian jobs by 2023 alone. Australian-made parts are now installed on every single Joint Strike Fighter globally. That is 600 aircraft so far and counting. Whenever a Joint Strike Fighter takes to the sky anywhere around the world, it does so relying on Australian know-how. This has not just happened. This is a very deliberate part of the Morrison government's plan to strengthen Australian sovereign defence industry. We have created the opportunities for Australian companies to contribute to a large global program for many decades to come.
Senator Hughes, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Can the minister outline how the Morrison government is strengthening Australia's air combat capabilities to build a stronger and safer Australia?
Senator Reynolds.
Thank you very much, Mr President. The Morrison government is investing more than $270 billion to deliver a more potent, agile and capable Australian Defence Force. This includes $65 billion over the next decade to deliver next-generation potent air capabilities. This includes improved weapons systems with longer range and also, importantly, greater survivability. Combining new and existing aircraft with remotely piloted and autonomous systems will also provide increased lethality and survivability. Our collaboration with Boeing on the Loyal Wingman is a prime example. This is the first military aircraft to be designed and built in Australia in more than 50 years. These investments are ensuring that Air Force will continue to have the technologically advanced strike and air combat capability it requires, which are increasingly being built and supported right here in Australia by Australians.
Senator Reynolds. Senator Hughes, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Can the minister outline the benefits to workers in the Hunter region of the Morrison government's investment in an advanced air combat capability as part of the economic comeback from COVID-19?
Senator Reynolds.
Well, thank you very much, Mr President. And I'm really sorry that those opposite are not really paying attention, because this is Australian jobs, Australian industry for the long term. This morning, Minister Price and I announced a wonderful example of how our Australian defence industry, supported by this government, is creating more jobs for Australian workers and supporting our comeback from COVID-19. BAE Systems recently hired 25 former Jetstar employees following the closure of Jetstar's aircraft maintenance facility near Newcastle. These highly skilled recruits have commenced training to help sustain Australia's growing fleet of Joint Strike Fighters and Hawk lead-in fighter aircraft. And I was so happy to meet two of them this morning, Ben and Colin. These technical workers have been retained in the Hunter aviation industry, and they're now helping Defence build its sovereign sustainment capability as our fleet continues to grow.
Order. Senator Reynolds, time has expired. Senator Dodson.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister for Families and Social Securities, Senator Ruxton. Yesterday on Sky News, Senator Canavan said about the cashless debit card, and I quote, "I think it's now time we take the evidence on board and roll it out across the country." Does this reflect the Morrison government's position?
The Minister for Families and Social Services, Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President, and I thank Senator Dodson for his question. Senator Dodson, you would be aware, as we are all aware, we are currently in debate on a bill that is before this parliament that seeks to deal with existing trial sites and also income management recipients in the Northern Territory and Cape York. Nowhere contained in that bill, is there any intention for any new communities or any new participants to be added to the cashless debit card or income management across Australia. So, Senator, I can assure you that the bill that is before you at the moment in this place is an absolute reflection of the existing policy of this government in relation to income management and in relation to the cashless debit card. But it does give me the opportunity, and I'm sure I'm going to have many more opportunities before this day is out, to put on the record that the cashless debit card is a superior piece of technology that allows people who are on the card to be able to go about their daily lives, unlike those people on the Basics card, and use this piece of technology in the same way as anybody else sitting in this chamber would be using a credit card or a debit card that is currently in their wallets. And can I acknowledge the extraordinary work of Senator O'Sullivan and the team of people that he's been working with over recent months to make sure that that technology is developed in such a way as the user experience for people that are on the card is absolutely seamless and appears no different and acts no differently than any other card that would be that you or I would have in our wallet. And I acknowledge that we will continue to work to make sure that we provide the very best technology to support Australians who need
Senator
our help.
Ruston. Senator Dodson, supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. In February this year, Minister, you said that the cashless debit card, the reason we haven't done it in the major cities is because we need to deal with the technological issues, and you've just said you've fixed all of that up, which we are now close to resolving. It does need to have a broader application, is also what you said. Can the minister confirm that the government's policy of making cashless debit card permanent in the current trial sites and the Northern Territory is just the first stage
Order.
of
Senator
the national
Dodson,
roundup?
time for the question has expired. Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President. Thank you, Senator Dodson, for your question. And no, I can't confirm that because that is not the case. But, Senator Dodson, one of the very important things about the changes that we're proposing at the moment is to make sure that we do use technology to provide assistance to Australians, to make sure that they have the very best opportunity to be able to use this card in a way that you and I use the cards that are in our wallet, including some of the technological advances that Senator O'Sullivan has been working with, by putting the card on your phone as an example so that you're able to swipe it. But as I mentioned in my question that I was asked by Senator McCarthy, we're also working with the Traditional Credit Union in the Northern Territory so that we can get a very good understanding as part of them becoming, hopefully, the issuer of the card going forward for people in the Northern Territory who will be on the cashless debit card. So,
Order. Senator Ruston. Senator Dodson, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. The Prime Minister said that the cashless debit card is, and I quote, commending itself for wider application. Can the minister give an ironclad guarantee that the cashless debit card will never ever be expanded?
Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President, and thanks Senator Dodson for his question. Clearly Senator Dodson has not heard what I have said in my primary question, that is that the policy of this government is reflected in the bill that is before this chamber as we stand here now. But we need to be really careful that we actually tell the truth and put the facts on the record when we discuss this card. And there are many misconceptions and that are spread around about this card. And another one was tried to be perpetrated in this place a few minutes ago with a question from Senator McCarthy. And I've now had the opportunity to read the ASIC letter that has been sent to Mr Stephen Jones MP, the Shadow Assistant Treasurer, and I'll just read you a line out of that letter. However, Section 12DL does not prohibit the unsolicited issue of the debit card or a deposit account to which the debit card is linked. I think that categorically states the answer.
Order. Senator Birmingham.
Thank you, Mr President. I ask that further questions be placed on notice.
Order. Order. Order.